The sun blazed over the town square, but its light couldn't warm the cold glares of the crowd. Today was a day that would mark a life forever. A girl, bound in ropes, was being dragged through the square, her supposed crime. Failing to bear children, whispers turned to shouts and shouts to cruel laughter. Her name was Amara, and her eyes, wide with fear, darted from face to face, searching for a hint of mercy, a glimpse of humanity. But all she saw were accusations, jeers, and the weight of centuries-old prejudices pressing down on her fragile shoulders. Why me?" she whispered, barely audible over the mob's uproar. Her knees scraped the cobblestones as the ropes tightened, cutting into her wrists. She had done nothing to deserve this humiliation, and yet here she was, a spectacle for the whole town to ridicule. Then, from the shadow of the mountains beyond the town, a figure appeared. A man, tall and broad, his silhouette cutting a sharp line against the sky. Rumors had always surrounded him. The Mountain Man, and they called him, but few had ever seen him, and fewer still dared cross his path. His eyes, dark and piercing, scanned the square, noting every sneer, every whisper, every cruel finger pointing at Amara. For a moment he stood still, as if weighing the town itself against the life of this one girl. And then he spoke. His voice rolled over the square like a distant storm, deep and commanding. "Enough! You have no right to destroy a life for your ignorance and fear." The crowd froze. The voice had come from nowhere, yet it carried an authority that silenced even the loudest voices. Some turned to flee, others froze in shock. The mayor, red-faced with fury, bellowed, "Who dares?" But the Mountain Man did not wait. With giant strides he crossed the cobblestones, and each step seemed to shake the earth. He reached Amara and knelt beside her, slicing through the ropes with a single, precise motion. The coarse fibers fell to the ground, and for the first time in hours, Amara breathed freely. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling, tears streaking her dusty cheeks. "But who are you?" "I am someone who cannot stand by while cruelty wins," he replied, his eyes scanning the mob. "And neither should you." The townspeople hesitated. Some looked ashamed, others angry, but none dared to move forward. The Mountain Man rose to his full height, every muscle coiled like steel. His presence was a warning, a promise that injustice would not go unanswered. He turned to Amara. "You are free, but this town, it must learn that strength is not in cruelty. It is in protecting those who cannot protect themselves." And just as he spoke, a hush fell over the square. The town, for the first time, felt small, powerless, and ashamed. Amara stepped back, her legs weak but her spirit alive. She realized she was witnessing something extraordinary, something no one in that town had ever dared. A single man defying centuries of fear and prejudice, not with violence but with courage. "Come with me," he said softly. "The mountains are free. They do not judge. They only protect." As they turned to leave, the town watched silently, and in that silence a seed was planted, a seed of change, of questioning, of hope. But as the Mountain Man and Amara disappeared into the peaks beyond, a murmur spread through the crowd. Some were angry, some were ashamed, and some, quietly, felt a spark of courage ignite inside themselves. Even as the sun set over the square, the story of that day was just beginning, and the legend of the Mountain Man, who defied the town, would be told for generations. For hours, Amara and the Mountain Man climbed the rugged slopes, the town's noise fading into nothing but a distant echo. The air grew thinner, colder yet somehow freer, as if the mountains themselves were breathing life into her weary spirit. Every step she took reminded her of the chains that had bound her, and every step the Mountain Man took reminded her that courage could cut through even the deepest fear. At the edge of a high cliff they stopped. The valley below glimmered in the twilight. Rivers like silver threads, forests stretching endlessly. Amara turned to him, gratitude and wonder mingling in her eyes. "You saved me," she whispered. He shook his head. "I didn't just save you. I showed you that fear is only powerful if you let it be. And I showed the town that cruelty has consequences." For a long moment neither spoke. The wind carried a silence, so profound it seemed the mountains, themselves were listening. Then Amara realized something. It wasn't just her life that had changed, it was her heart. A fire had ignited within her, a fire she hadn't felt in years. The mountain man finally spoke, his voice calm but unyielding. "Tomorrow the town will remember today. Some will fear, some will question, and some may even seek to change. But whatever happens, never forget this. Courage is contagious. And you, Amara, are no longer powerless." She nodded, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The chains of shame, humiliation, and false blame that had bound her for so long were gone, replaced by a new strength she could feel in her bones. As night fell, the first stars began to twinkle above the mountains. Amara stood tall, looking back at the distant town, its lights small and fragile in the valley below. She knew the road ahead would not be easy. The town would never forget so quickly, and some hearts would remain cruel, but she also knew she would never be the same. The mountain man turned, his silhouette dark against the starry sky. "Rest now. Tomorrow, the world begins anew, and your story is just starting." Amara inhaled deeply, filling her lungs with the crisp mountain air, feeling for the first time a sense of belonging, of safety, of freedom. And for the first time in her life she smiled without fear, without doubt. The mountains stood silent around them, eternal witnesses to courage, justice, and hope. And in that stillness, the chapter of her suffering ended. A new chapter, a chapter of strength, defiance, and life, was ready to begin.